Welcome to the Fantasy Injury Team podcast, brought to you by Guys Trip. I'm your host, Joe D'Amico, joined by the doctor of physical therapy, Tom Christ, to discuss more wide receivers coming off major injuries and how they'll fare for the upcoming 2023 season. But first, fellas, are you planning a golf trip, bachelor party, sporting event trip, or just need a weekend getaway with the guys? Guys Trip plans your entire trip and saves you up to 30% off retail pricing for rental homes, transportation, golf, nightlife, and much more. Visit guystriplive.com. That's guystriplive.com. Use code FIT, that's F-I-T, for an additional 10% off your fee today. Guys Trip. Just show up. What a cool content. A cool concept right there. We'll definitely talk a little bit more about them, our official sponsor, and guys, for you out there also, if you love our content as much as me and Tom and the guys like making it, make sure while you're here you give us a 5-star rating. Follow us over on Twitter, X, we're at injury_fantasy, Instagram at fantasy injury team. All the housekeeping stuff is out of the way. Tom, we have had several phenomenal guests lately, man. We got Tano Passano, we had Stephania Bell, many more to come this season, but today it's just us two. And Tom, as we're sitting here, you are on your way, not in the car, taking a little stop, but you are on your way to the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio. Is that right?
That's right. I'm making a little pit stop in Pittsburgh at my aunt and uncle's house for the nights. And then it gets started tomorrow. I believe tomorrow is Friday. It starts, I think, at 6 o'clock with a little social bar thing. And then got some activities on Saturday. I'll hit the Hall of Fame on Saturday. And then Sunday is the actual expo conference material, whatever you want to call it. I'm pretty excited to be on the medical panel there at 11 a.m., hosted by Jesse Morris at the Fantasy Doctors, and some other great people will be on there as well. So if you're headed to the expo, be sure to check it out.
It's going to be you and some of the big dogs, some of the fantasy football big dogs, and Tom Christ going to be there. That's awesome. Real quick before our show, how about Guys Trip, man? Really cool concept. We're really close friends with these guys. It is a phenomenal idea. I wish I got behind that.
So I've known these are like college friends of mine. I've known them for a while. They are the perfect group of people to be running this type of business. Like, I've been on many guys trips with these guys, and it's always a blast. And the fact that they're saving you up to 30% plus using our promo code FIT saves you another 10%. It's practically a free trip.
It's good stuff. I mean, whenever I'm on a trip with my wife, she's the planner, but Guys Trip, bachelor parties, like, nobody wants to sit there and plan, oh, we're going to golf on this course, we're going to this part. No, these guys will take care of it for you. It's good.
I hate planning so much.
Tell that to my wife. She's our planner, and without her, I would probably need Guys Trip. So for everybody out there, enjoy it. Go check that out. But Tom, again, just me and you today, baby. Let's dive in. We have 6 more wide receivers. We discussed, I believe, 6 last show with Stephania Bell. Some guys going a little bit, lower or earlier in ADP. Today, we're going to slide a little bit later, but nonetheless, guys, this stuff matters just as much as the first guys do. And let me say this. I think a lot of us, when we're sitting here planning for fantasy football, planning for our drafts, we're thinking about, who am I going to take first round, second round? At least for me, that's what almost encompasses and takes all of my thought. Late is so important. So we got some guys going, wide receiver. Really, our range today is 26 to 50, 60, right? This is the time in the draft, guys, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, that you're going to make your team. So buckle up, listen carefully. We got some real good stuff for you, Tom, and for everybody out there. Starting with the guy going at wide receiver 26, Big Mike Williams, overall going around 70th. So that, again, is a late 6th rounder. Big Mike, now 28 years old. Tom talks all the time about age, getting up there a little bit in age. Been a really frustrating player throughout his NFL and fantasy career. We would love to have this guy stay on the field more, but most recently, a right ankle injury. So, Tom, how do we feel about Big Mike going into the 2023 season?
Well, let's look at his history of injuries. He had that cervical spine fracture in college. Then first year in the league, had a lumbar disc herniation that he missed 5 games with. But since then, it I feel like it feels like he's injured more than he actually is. So he's missed one game with a knee bruise, one game with a back injury, one game with a hamstring injury, and then last year he had that high ankle sprain that he missed 2 games for, came back probably a little too soon, re-aggravated it, and missed another 2 games. So I think we have a bad taste in our mouth with Mike Williams, but maybe not appropriately, because he really hasn't missed that much time for how long he's been in the league. But I think it's the combination of last season where he was injured, returned maybe a little too quickly, got re-injured, same injury, plus the style of play he plays. Like, he's always flying through the air, landing hard on his back. It looks like he should be injured more than he is, right? But he's only missed 11 games in the NFL. As far as his history of what's concerning, this most recent one, the ankle sprains, a little bit, because we know that ankle sprains have a tendency to recur, especially high ankle sprains are more significant than a lateral ankle sprain, etc. But when those ligaments start to get injured, they don't always heal up quite as strong. So now you're relying more on muscular support to hold the ankle together. So potentially a slightly elevated risk there, but I'm really not overly concerned about him from a medical standpoint. I think the other frustrating thing about him is it's hit or miss. Like, you don't know.
Always hit or miss, man. Always.
Tremendous best ball guy. But if and this is my opinion, if you're drafting him in redraft, or if you're thinking about trading for him in dynasty, you have to have other stable pieces on your receiving core, because Mike Williams will win you games, but he could also lose you games.
Said literally perfectly. I'm going back to what you said just a couple minutes ago. Bad taste in your mouth. I had, my 7-8 leagues. I think I had 3 shares of him. Sour milk, sour things. I don't know. Bad taste in my mouth, Tom. I still have it from him. And listen, you said you're not like overly worried from an injury standpoint, but for me, a lot of worry, a lot of concern on the fantasy front. Listen, you're picking this guy in the 6th round, right? Like, or you're not, or you're passing on him. The only thing I guarantee you with Big Mike this year is volatility, right? I mean, you said you're not really worried about it, but you guys have to consider your own risk tolerance here, right? I'm going to guarantee this from the least medical perspective possible. I guarantee he's probably going to miss a couple games. I guarantee you guys, I had him last year. I almost watched every snap of the Chargers because I had so many shares of that offense. I guarantee you Mike Williams is going to have some games this year, 2 catches, 19 yards. He'll disappear. But then, Tom, I guarantee you he's going to have a couple games, 9 catches, 102, 2 touchdowns, snagging the ball, deep ball out of the air, right? Like, for me, that's not what I'm looking for in a 6th rounder. I want someone who's going to start for me every single week, and someone that I know when to start, right? Because let's take a look here, right? Because we got to dive in. This is why it was so frustrating. These are his finishes from last season. Okay. Impacted by injuries in 6 games, weekly finishes and half-point PPR, 102nd, 8th, 46th, 13, 9, 68, 6, 84, 4, 40, 35, 18, 61. How could you even play him with confidence after he finishes 102nd week 1 and then he comes back the next week? It's just, for me, listen, it's still early, still August 10th, but reports out of camp, which we always take with a grain of salt. I don't know if you've read this. Keenan Allen has been their real number 1 as of now, and this you have to take so lightly. Number 2 guy consistently at camp has been John Hightower.
Whoa.
John Hightower.
I thought you were going to say Josh Palmer, because I've seen a lot of nice clips of Palmer.
That's a name out there, right? But of course I express my love for Quentin Johnston, Joshua Palmer, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler. There's a lot of guys here. I think he's going to disappear. And a couple more things here. Last year, with much less target competition, he was a wide receiver 1 4 times, wide receiver 2 twice, and here's what hurts. Finished worse than a wide receiver 2 7 times, right? He played 5 games last year that could actually potentially have lost you your week, where he put up 2 to 6 points, right? I'm going to have 0 shares of him, Tom. I don't know. You can kind of touch on if you are going to have him at all. I'm taking more safe guys that also give you that upside, around his ADP. Drake London, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk. If you had to throw a percentage, Tom, in all your leagues, what's your percentage of Mike Williams shares going to be like?
In redraft, probably 0.
Redraft, yeah.
In best ball, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder if there is a player in the league this year that has a wider range of outcomes on a week-to-week basis than Mike Williams, because he could easily get you 35 points in 1 week, but also 0.
Absolutely. I mean, the Kellen Moore offense, everybody's talking about it. They're going to take more deep shots, and that's Big Mike's game. But it's just last year. I'm just telling you because I experienced it. Should I start him this week? Should I not? He just gave me 2 points and lost me last week, but then he sits and rots on your bench and he has 30 points. He's one of the most frustrating guys, Tom. But I mean, at least to wrap up Mike Williams, you're not really too worried from at least a health perspective, right? Generally speaking here.
Low to moderate concern. I would say
Okay.
no different than any other 28-year-old receiver.
Okay, fair enough. Well said. On to player number 2. It is Marquise Brown going off the board right now. Half-point PPR. We're using Fantasy Pros here just for today. Wide receiver 32, Marquise Brown's going off. Overall 83rd, looking at a late 7th rounder. He's 2 years younger. He's 26, coming off that foot fracture in October. What are your thoughts on Hollywood for this year, Tom?
So his history, he had a Liz Frank injury that required surgery in college, and then I think a year or so later, they went in and took the screws out, which is not abnormal. Ankle sprain, a couple knee sprains, hamstring injuries, but really it's just this most recent fracture that he missed a substantial amount of time for. Prior to that, I think he'd only missed 3 games in the NFL. So durability, while there's a decent list, he had played through most of these injuries, indicating they weren't really all that severe. Age is great, especially for the type of injuries he's had. The 2-foot injuries are what would really concern me if he was a little bit older, because we know with age, anytime you're immobilized, which with a foot injury, a foot fracture or surgery you are, typically, the older you are, the harder it gets to regain the motion. And within the foot, there's so many little tiny joints that need to have this little intricate amount of motion for the foot to function properly. And if even just one of those joints, especially in the midfoot, gets a little stiff, it just kind of throws things off, which could impact ability to run, jump, cut, be stable on one leg, and also influence stuff up the leg that could potentially predisposed to injury. But the fact that all his injuries were at such a young age, it makes it much more likely that he is able to regain full motion and all those things I just named not be an issue. Last season, he was a wide receiver 6 overall before he got hurt. When he returned, his stats dropped off significantly. Now, some of that's due to DeAndre Hopkins being back in the fold. Some of that's due to Kyler Murray getting injured. But some of that may have been he just wasn't totally 100%. I mean, his snap percentage was picked up right where it left off, I think in the 90s pretty much every game. But he never had another double-digit fantasy output after returning from his injury. I expect that to be a lot better this season. But then again, who's going to be throwing to him? There's going to be Colt McCoy for a while. Not the worst quarterback, but not as good as a healthy Kyler. When Kyler comes back, is he going to be 100%? I mean, it's Kyler's right knee, which is the one that he pushes off of to generate power, that was injured. So there's a lot of question marks here. But if we're talking health specifically, I'm not super concerned with Marquise Brown heading into this season. There's just a lot of factors to consider here.
Sure. And one of the big ones you just mentioned was Kyler, of course, the quarterback situation. Now, you're usually pretty good at predicting when guys will come back. Just, how many games do you think Kyler Murray, we talked about this in an earlier episode, depends how good the Cardinals are, right? But let's say the Cardinals are around 500, if that, right? How many games do you see him missing where we're going to have Colt McCoy throwing the ball to these Cardinals weapons?
I don't think Kyler's practiced yet. And what's today, August 10th? Still several weeks before the season starts, but it's trending like he won't see the field till week 5 at the best. And the 32 beat writers had Tyler Drake from Arizona on. I think we talked about this already on the show, but that's the vibe he was getting as well, was that they were not going to rush Kyler back. And also week 1 is only an 8 months and 7 weeks post-op for Kyler. And we want at least 9 months, preferably 10 plus before returning. So I don't think we'll see Kyler before week 5.
Okay. And just to add this in, guys, this is why we're so unique here at the Fantasy Injury Team. This is what we do. And Tom, I got to give you credit. You're usually darn spot on with this stuff. But you guys right now, as you're listening or whenever, go to our website, fantasyinjuryteam.com, and you could pick. There's a whole drop down. It's awesome. You could pick any injury you want and check out the statistics of how guys perform coming off these injuries. These are things that we reference, things that we talk about. It's an amazing tool. I use it every single week, right? If you have a guy coming back from a hamstring or an ankle or a shoulder, whatever it might be, go check out. Does this injury really impact the player through the first week they're back? When did they start to really, really improve? That's what I would be doing here. So definitely check that out. But I think, Tom, with Hollywood, man, there's some positive things here. Like, he's going to be the clear number 1, I think, in Arizona. And when Hopkins was suspended, he was the wide receiver 5 or 6 at that point. And the Cardinals, listen, for what it's worth, they're going to be bad. Simple. They have to throw
really bad
to keep pace. They're going to have to throw the ball, right? He could receive, I don't know, 25, 27% target share. That's up there with some of the big dogs, right? But again, you got to evaluate this. It's the quality of the targets, right? Colt McCoy, not the worst. It's not Kyler Murray throwing you the ball. But again, I mean, this is list of his targets when Hopkins was suspended last year: 6, 11, 17, 11, 10, and 9. It's a volume play, right? He's a talented guy. Yeah, you got Rondale Moore there, but they're different types of players. Rondale Moore plays a lot around, the slot, the line of scrimmage. You got Greg Dortch. I mean, Zach Ertz, the aging Zach Ertz, right? I mean,
well, Ertz has his own injury he's coming back from.
Right, that too. I think you're getting him as what, a wide receiver 3.
And
he could perform as a 2. He could perform as a 2 with all these targets.
And he's definitely a guy that I think as the year progresses and Murray gets healthier, his numbers will just get better.
Yeah. And the pace he was on, again, without Hopkins and with Murray, pretty good. So that is, I think it's a steal where he's going. We'll check out his ADP if it keeps changing and rising. But wide receiver 32 for a guy who could be a low-end wide receiver 2 overall on your team, I'd be happy with that. All right. Third player, 4 left, we have Odell Beckham Jr. going at wide receiver 45, overall 107. That's around the 9th round. Tom, he is 30 years old, tore his ACL all the way back in February in the Super Bowl 2022. Have his injuries made him fantasy irrelevant? What do you think, man?
Well, everything is at cost, of course. So where he's going in drafts right now is you're not spending all that much. ADP wide receiver 45, 108 overall. He has a long injury list. We're talking over 16 injuries, and I'm referencing Draft Shark's injury list here, a number of which he's missed substantial time for. We got an ankle fracture, 2 ACLs, and many other things. And he's 30 now. Age is not working for him anymore. What is working for him is that he's had 1.5 years, probably more, since his surgery. So from an ACL standpoint, which we remember him tearing it in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, he's 100%. And we've seen that in his videos. He's run around just fine. But Beckham has not been an elite receiver since 2016. I think a lot of us just hold on to him because of how special he was those first couple years. And my goodness, he was one of the most fun receivers I've ever watched play. Like, I remember that catch. I was sitting in my room watching it, and I just screamed. And my roommate at the time came running in. He's like, what happened? What happened? Something going on? And I'm like, bro, you got to look at the TV. And that'll always be one of the best catches in NFL history.
Absolutely awesome.
But hasn't been elite since 2016, has not been a wide receiver 15 or better since 2018. So I don't mind where he's going. I just think you have to temper the upside expectations. I would much rather, in a similar ADP, go for either of his two teammates who have higher upside. Rashad Bateman, we'll talk about in a second, and glowing reviews about Zay Flowers.
And also probably the coolest name ever, just Zay Flowers.
That is a
Absolutely
pretty
awesome. But
freaking awesome name.
now with Odell, you referenced this perfectly, Tom. What you always talk about is age and prior injury. And you basically nailed it on the head, right? I mean, you shout that from the mountaintops all the time. Prior injury, Odell has a ton of them. And age, he's getting up there, right? I mean, there's a lot of things to factor in. He did just get a 1-year deal. I think it was something like 12 or 15 million with a lot of incentives.
Pretty substantial.
Yeah, it was a good one. Now, you also referenced that he hasn't been good in many years. Since 2017, Odell's finished as a wide receiver 2 or better one time. It's legitimately been 6 years since we've seen him dominate and be fantasy relevant. I mean, he could be a guy for the Ravens, I think, who can flash and have some big games. He could also be a guy that you pick and you drop him, right? You get rid of him going in the 9th round. I'd be okay taking risk and dropping someone who I get late. 9th round, I'm still trying to kind of, pad my team here. I mean, talked about Zay Flowers, Bateman. I like them both over Odell with their ADP. Listen, Odell could be the 4th or 5th best option on his own team when you bring in Andrews, Dobbins. I mean, don't fool yourself. Around him, I like to try to give alternatives. I like a lot of the other guys that, like we mentioned, Zay Flowers is going right around the same ADP. Sky Moore hearing really great things about in camp. Even Cortland Sutton, I think. Elijah Moore, Quentin Johnston. These are a lot of guys that are going somewhat near him. Cortland Sutton, I think a little bit earlier, but these are a lot of the guys going around him at ADP. Now, before we close up on Odell here, did you see what he said recently in an interview, Tom?
Something about he would have had 250 yards and 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
It's all talk.
That's as Odell as it gets. You got to love it.
It's so Odell. I love that little competitive flair that he has and the swag. But he said, people have no idea what I was actually going to do that day. It was going to be the day where I catch 15 balls, maybe 250 yards. The game plan was for me, said Odell. We would have beat him 42-17. And then Tyler Boyd came back and said, I think he tweeted at him, said, woulda, coulda, shoulda. For me, I think that wraps up Odell's career pretty well. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. And I think that when you guys out there, at least my opinion, when you see his name, I'm passing on it. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm going for somebody else.
I think we all have that friend who's like, man, I would have made it in the NFL or the NBA if it weren't for that injury. I could have thrown the ball 70 yards if I didn't tear my rotator cuff or something like that.
I have a bum knee. I had that shoulder. If I was playing college, I probably would have been drafted if I just didn't have that shoulder. Everybody's got one. He's one of them, man. Sad story, I guess, over his career there with all these injuries. But, man, he was fun. I'll never forget just the catch, yes. But just watching him as taking slants to the house. Yeah. Quick slant, Eli Manning, boop, gone, up the field, 80 yards.
It's nothing.
It was unbelievable, for sure. Let's go to his teammate, Rashad Bateman, going right around the same pick, guys. We're looking 11th round here. Wide receiver 51, really young, 23 years old, a Liz Frank sprain. I need answers, Tom. Should we continue to be patient on Rashad Bateman? What do you think his outlook is for this year? Let's talk a little bit of injury analysis first.
Yeah, history. So 2 years in the league, missed 5 games with the groin his rookie year, missed 10 games last season with the Liz Frank injury that needed surgery. And typically that's about a 6-month to return to full play. He's at month 9 now, and we know that there's been some setbacks when they removed the screws. There's some inflammation, irritation in the foot that required a cortisone injection, which is not standard. And sometimes that there's people that their biology, they just swell more. They have more inflammation, more irritation, more scar tissue. There's no way to know that until they have some kind of procedure like this. It's not necessarily their fault. It's not their fault at all, actually. But that does tell us that he's a little behind on the timeline. Now, the good sign is that he returned to practice yesterday. And while there's only in a few short videos, he looked really good. He was cutting hard, he was cutting quickly, he looked confident, no hesitation. But with this type of situation, with the irritation, inflammation, whatever you want to call it, that usually takes repetition to come on. So I don't know that I would necessarily expect one practice to be an issue. So we're going to have to monitor him really close over the next 2-3 weeks before draft season really kicks off. And if there are more issues that come about, then I'm really raising red flags, because this is a midfoot injury. The midfoot is so involved with anything we do in weight bearing, especially running, cutting, and jumping. So if he has another setback before your draft, then he's definitely at risk for setbacks throughout the season, like this to continue to flare up. But that's not necessarily going to happen. That's why we need to very closely monitor the reports out of Baltimore over the next few weeks. We saw Travis Etienne had pretty much the same injury, and he looked great in his first year back. So it's certainly possible that Bateman could just pick up where he left off. We know he's super talented, super fast, but definitely from a risk standpoint, for injury risk standpoint, more elevated than any of the guys that we've talked about so far. I am definitely concerned, but that concern could go down if over the next few weeks everything is smooth sailing. And the nice thing about Bateman is there's not from a draft capital standpoint, you're not spending much on him. Looking at ADP of like receiver 52, 131 overall, that's not much of a risk from your building your team draft capital standpoint. I do expect his ADP to rise quite a bit, though, since he just returned to practice last week.
No doubt could see him as a guy who rises in ADP. Like we just talked about Odell, 9th round, I'm not willing to take the risk, but now it's all, guys, you got to play like the stock market, right? Like who are you going to get value on? If Bateman is sitting there in the 12th round,
take him.
I'm not mad because then if that's the case, year starts and nothing's going on 6-7 weeks in, you drop them. It doesn't crush your team like it does to pick one of the guys like this in the 7th, 8th round. So I do think you're getting for a discount. I think a lot of people are running out of patience with him. I mean, 27th pick overall in the 2021 draft hasn't really lived up to it, but there's still a lot of hype around him. Tons of talent. There is a little bit of a crowded receiver room, Odell, Flowers, who we discussed, Andrews as tight end. It's going to be hard for me to pull the trigger on him in the 10th round. But again, 11th or 12th, I think it's pretty fair. Like Tom said, activated yesterday, right?
Yesterday,
from the pup list. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'll say this, if his ADP was quite a bit higher, like 6th, 7th round, then my concern level is much higher, because from an injury risk standpoint, I'm somewhat concerned with how long it took him to come back from this injury. Also had missed 5 weeks in his rookie year with a groin injury. Like both of those are lower body injuries, which we don't like to see. He is young though, which is in his favor. So if his ADP rises too much, like past round 9, I'm probably staying away.
I'm with you. I think this is something that, Tom, you'll definitely monitor. You'll be tweeting about this. Again, that's why he's a great follow, just throwing plugs out here left and right at you. But it's true. These are going to be things that you're tweeting out. We'll take a look at him. Got about a month till the season starts. Now, before we move on, we have 2 players left. Tom, you mentioned Zay Flowers. And I just got to throw him a little bit of a bone here, because look at the NFL draft, right? Loaded with wide receivers. Pretty good class. You had JSN, pick 20 overall, going to Seattle. You had Quentin Johnston, pick 21, going to the Chargers. You had Jordan Addison, pick 23, going to the Vikings, right? I think those are 3 guys, Tom, that we hear a lot of hype about. JSN, all the talent, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison. Well, I mentioned pick 20, 21, and 23. Oddly enough, pick 22 in the draft was Zay Flowers. This guy is awesome. Zay Flowers, Boston College. I watched some of the highlight tapes of him, looked at some of his metrics, that type of stuff. Like, you guys have to look and see who of this group has the clearest path to being on the field, but then also possibly being the wide receiver 2 for their team, right? I would probably say Jordan Addison or wide receiver 1, right?
Target 1 is going to be Andrews, but wide receiver 1, like Flowers easily could be.
It could be him. I mean, I love Addison. He has a really good chance at it. Johnson still has to fight off obviously injury prone Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, there's a chance there. JSN, one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen, still Tyler Lockett, still DK Metcalf. So Zay Flowers, guys, he's a guy that I can say in the same breath as these other guys comfortably, who I feel like is not getting all the credit. But again, I think at ADP, Tom, rank them real quick. At ADP, Flowers, Bateman, Odell, who are you targeting and who I guess are you not?
I would go Flowers first, then Bateman, then Beckham.
Okay, ditto that. Perfect. All right. Now, Tom, Michael Thomas is not the next guy, but I do believe this is a guy that you're raising your eyebrows at me over there that you're quite fond of for the 2023 season. Can't stop smiling, Tom. And now I'm smiling because you're smiling. Jameson Williams, everybody. Wide receiver 52. Again, guy going to the 11th round, super young, 22 years old. Tore his ACL in the national championship game way back January 10th, 2022. But last year he had it was a leg injury, right? Something like that, Tom. It was a leg injury. What can you tell us about Jameson?
No, he didn't play last season until late last season because he was still rehabbing the ACL, which was super smart on Detroit's end to let him take as much time as he needed.
Sure.
They knew they weren't competing for much last year, but clearly this year they are. I'm super excited to watch that team this year. He played limited snaps last season. I believe 25% was the most snaps that he had in a single game, but he showed flashes of that elite speed that made him one of the top prospects at his position. He got a couple plays he got behind the defense, a 40-something yard touchdown, end around for 40-something yards. And in camp, we've seen videos of him just getting deep on the team. Now, hands are apparently a bit of a concern with him. Dan Campbell even said something like he's never going to be an elite hands catcher, but his speed is going to compensate for it. From a injury standpoint, 1.5 years post-op ACL, not concerned whatsoever at this point. He doesn't really have any other injury history, at least according to Draft Sharks, he doesn't. And of course, he's suspended for 6 games. That sucks. But at the ADP of wide receiver 50, another guy that you're not sacrificing much drafting him. And the upside is tremendous. The floor, we don't know because he hasn't played much. Some people are starting to say that he's a bust candidate. I haven't seen nearly enough of him to say that. And his collegiate profile was excellent. 1,500-something yards, 15 touchdowns his last season at Alabama. Elite speed, game-breaking speed, the comparisons to Tyreek Hill speed. I love him where he's going. I'm trying to get him 9th, 10th round everywhere.
Remember the last time somebody told us that a young wide receiver couldn't catch the ball and they didn't have elite hands? I believe that was Jamar Chase, and they were like, yeah, he can't catch the... Listen, it is weird. It is weird that Dan Campbell, I saw the same quote as you. He said, like, he's never going to have elite, exactly like you said, never going to have elite hands. I'm like, what? But you're right. He's fast as could be. He's got amazing speed. Going to be tied to a prolific. I mean, they're going to be playing for a lot this year, man. They're going to have a good, solid, high-flying offense. But obviously, suspended for 6 games. And then what a lot of people, I think also don't think about is also the bye week, right? And the bye week, unfortunately, doesn't come during the suspension during week 9. So there's going to be a lot of stashing. And are you going to play him the first week in week 7 when he's back? Probably not, right? So he's a guy that I think if you can be super, super patient on him and stash him. Now, I would be curious, can you put him on the IR slot? I do my leagues in ESPN. I don't think you can put him there, right? I don't think
so. You shouldn't be able to. That should not be allowed. But
I don't think so either.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure ESPN and Sleeper you can't. Those are the 2 platforms I use.
I like that you can't.
I think so. Yeah, I agree.
You have to really do some of the work yourselves, as always, guys, and evaluate your team. You know, are you comfortable? Do you have guys that you feel comfortable? Evaluate your record. You're 2-4, and you need a guy right away. It's probably not worth it. But if you can go 500, 4-2, and then here comes Jameson Williams, right? It could be a guy that propels you to a championship. Or stick this in the back of your mind. If he's a free agent, don't wait until week 7 to pick him up, right? See how long you could go. Maybe week 3, week 4, he's still out there. Pick him up, stash him for a couple weeks, see what he could do for you. Last guy, Tom, is Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 61, going overall 165. That's the 14th round. That's a late one. 25 years old. Last year, an ankle ligament injury. And he missed the final 5 games, I think, of the year, right?
Yeah.
Popular sleeper last year. I remember a lot of people, 6th, 7th round, Darnell Mooney talk, and now slides all the way to the 14th. What do you think, Tom?
It's interesting how far he's fallen. I know he was not producing last year before his injury anyway. And I mean, that offense, Justin Fields was doing it all on the ground. The whole offense was really doing it on the ground. From an injury standpoint, the fibula fracture with most likely a high ankle sprain as well, because he went out and said that his surgery included the tightrope procedure, which is for a high ankle sprain. Also had some screws in there for the fibula fracture. So there's some concern there with anytime there's screws put in the ankle, potential for not regaining full range of motion. But again, super young, 25. So that makes it more likely that he did regain full motion. He's been practicing in full, but with a few days off, just a few more days off than he would otherwise if he wasn't coming back from injury. But I really don't expect it to hinder him at all. I mean, very similar to Tony Pollard's situation. We haven't covered running backs yet, but just a little spoiler, I'm not concerned about Tony Pollard at all. All reports in camp for Mooney have been positive, really low to moderate risk, in my opinion, from an injury standpoint. And like you said, he's practically free going in like the 14th round.
Yeah, crazily.
And this is a guy that we know is a good player. Now, the addition of DJ Moore will take some targets away from him, but it'll also open things up for him. So does Mooney have super high upside? No, he's not going to be a wide receiver 1. He's not going to finish top 20, most likely. But like the stock market analogy you just made, you're buying him as cheap as it gets. He's most likely gonna pay off for that ADP. So I love taking him super late in drafts.
He might pay off, but are you happy if he's wide receiver going off the board 61 and finishes at wide receiver 45? Is that like you're jumping for joy? Can't even play him? Like that's why I'm so hesitant to take these types of guys, that he's not going to be a top 24, even top 30, maybe even not even top 40. Like he could beat his ADP, but by how much? I don't know. I have a hard time with that.
I don't know that there's many other people in that range that have super high ceilings either, though. And I think he could finish better than 45, somewhere around mid 30s, which bye week fill-ins, great. If you have a number of players that get injured at receiver, maybe he's somebody you could fill in for a couple weeks.
Okay. Are some guys around there I'd prefer over him? Sky Moore, even, we're going to talk probably more about these guys, but Nico Collins, Romeo Dobbs, our boy that Tano talked about, Rashid Shaheed, Jonathan Mingo. There's some guys around there, but like you said, Tom, kind of a newly crowded room, right? And one of my big concerns, he's talented, exactly like you said, but how many guys for fantasy football can Justin Fields really sustain? I mean, last year we're looking at, I think they're going to throw more this year. Bears ranked 31st in pass rate last year. We know Justin Fields likes to take off. They have a couple of decent running backs, and last year in half PPR, Mooney's best weekly finish was 12 in the 11 games that he played. His average finish was actually 52, which, Tom, you said, that is better than his ADP. But again, a little bit crowded. You have Moore, Claypool, Herbert, Kmet. There's some guys there, but hey, maybe worth a dart throw. All right. And what's next week, Tommy? I think it's running back season, right? We're going to hit the running backs next show.
We're getting close.
All right. Tom, have a absolutely amazing time. Enjoy yourself. When are you leaving tonight? What's the plan?
No, I'm staying in Pittsburgh tonight. I'll head there tomorrow afternoon. I think it's about 2 hours from here.
All right. Have an amazing time. For our listeners out there, you guys are the best. We love you. We appreciate you guys so much. Again, next week we'll be into running backs. Thank you to our sponsors as well. Our sponsor, Guys Trip. Remember, guys, check them out. GuysTripLive.com. Use promo code FIT. Extra 10% off your trip. Thank you guys again for listening. We are the Fantasy Injury Team, and we'll see you next time.